No one came to the wedding expecting fear. They came for silk dresses, golden lights, and a powerful man finally choosing peace. They came to watch a Korean mafia boss say, "I do." But somewhere between the music and the smiles, death slipped into the room. It hid behind quiet signals, trained eyes, and people who knew how to wait. And the only person who noticed it was a black waitress no one remembered hiring. She wasn't part of the family. She wasn't invited. She wasn't supposed to matter. Yet before the night was over, she would break a sacred moment, shock hundreds of guests, and change the fate of a man who ruled the underworld. One kiss would stop a bullet. One choice would expose a betrayal. And one woman would lose the life she knew forever. This is not just a story about love. It's about timing. About danger hiding in plain sight. And about how the smallest person in the room saw something everyone else missed. Because what she saved him from was already aiming to kill him. The wedding hall glowed like a dream made of gold. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, soft music filled the air, and powerful people from different worlds sat side by side, pretending they trusted one another. At the center of it all stood Seo Kong-ryan, calm and controlled, dressed in white, the same man who once ruled the streets with fear. Tonight, he was a groom. Tonight was meant to close old chapters and open a safer future. Moving quietly through the room was Amara, a black waitress in a simple uniform. She carried trays, avoided eye contact, and blended into the background the way waitresses were trained to do. No one looked at her twice. No one asked her name. That was fine with her. But as she passed a table near the back, something made her slow down. A man lifted his glass. Tapped it twice. Paused. Then nodded toward the ceiling. Amara froze. Her chest tightened, and the sounds of the wedding faded into a dull echo. She had seen that exact signal before, not here, not tonight, but weeks ago, during a private event she never should have worked. Back then, she had been hiding behind curtains after spilling a drink, listening to men speak in low voices about a killing planned with perfect timing. They talked about a public place. A celebration. A kiss that would distract the target just long enough. They never said who would die. Now Amara looked at the groom. Her hands began to shake. She scanned the room again, her eyes moving faster now. The cameras. The guards. The guests. Then she saw it, a dark reflection in the tall glass windows, something round and steady. A scope. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a countdown. The bride stepped closer to Kong-ryan, smiling as the crowd leaned forward. Phones were raised. The music softened. The moment everyone waited for was almost here. Amara tried to speak, but no sound came out. If the kiss happened, the shot would follow. She had seconds. No proof. No power. No one would believe her. Except there was one thing she could do. Something bold. Something shocking. Something that would break the timing and expose the danger hiding behind the smiles. As the officiant lifted his hand, Amara stepped forward from the shadows. And in that moment, everything was about to change. The wedding hall shone like a palace made of light. Gold decorations wrapped around tall glass walls, and crystal chandeliers glowed above rows of smiling guests. Soft music played as people clapped, laughed, and whispered to one another. This was not just a wedding. It was a show of power, wealth, and peace. At the center of it all stood Seo Kong-ryan, calm and unreadable, dressed in white. Tonight, he was not feared. Tonight, he was admired. Amara moved quietly between the tables, balancing a silver tray in her hands. She was a black waitress in a plain uniform, trained to stay out of the way. Her eyes stayed low, her steps careful. She poured drinks, collected empty glasses, and disappeared before anyone could remember her face. That was how she survived her shifts. As she passed a table near the back of the hall, something small broke the perfect picture. A man stood near the exit doors. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. His suit was dark, his posture straight, his eyes cold and focused. He lifted his glass, tapped it twice with a spoon, paused for a short moment, then gave a slow nod toward the ceiling. The sound was light. Almost harmless. But Amara froze. Her breath caught in her throat, and the tray in her hands tilted slightly. She quickly steadied it, forcing a calm smile as a guest reached for a drink. Inside, her chest tightened like a rope being pulled too hard. She knew that signal. Her hands began to shake as memory rushed back without warning. Weeks ago, at a private event she had been hired to serve, she had hidden behind thick curtains after spilling a drink. She remembered voices, low, confident, careless. She remembered a man explaining timing, distractions, and a signal that would confirm everything was in place. 2 taps. A pause. A nod. That signal had meant the same thing then as it did now. Amara walked forward, her legs moving even though her mind was screaming at her to stop. The music sounded distant. Laughter echoed like it came from underwater. She scanned the room as she walked, her eyes jumping from face to face, from walls to windows, from guards to cameras. Everything looked beautiful. Everything looked normal. That scared her more. She glanced up toward the ceiling. The lights were bright, but the tall glass panels reflected more than decorations. For a brief second, she thought she saw something dark, something round, something still. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Amara looked back toward the man near the exit. He was watching the room now, calm and patient, like someone waiting for the right moment. Their eyes met for a single second. There was no surprise in his. Only certainty. Amara understood then what no one else in the hall did. The signal was not a joke. It was not a mistake. It was the final step. And somewhere above them, someone was already prepared to kill. The sound of the wedding faded as a memory forced its way into Amara's mind, sharp and heavy, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Weeks earlier, she had been working a private party far from the city, inside a quiet mansion surrounded by tall gates. The lights had been low, the music slow and heavy, and the air thick with smoke and expensive perfume. The guests were not loud, but their silence felt dangerous. They spoke only when needed, and when they did, others listened. Amara moved carefully through the room with a tray of drinks, keeping her eyes down like she always did. She did not ask questions. She did not stay near one table too long. That night felt wrong, and she wanted her shift to end quickly. Then her hand slipped. A glass tipped, and dark red wine spilled across the floor, spreading fast toward polished shoes. The room went quiet for a moment. Amara apologized again and again, her voice shaking as she bent to clean the mess. One man stared at her with cold eyes before waving his hand. "Go," he said. "Stand back there." Amara hurried behind a thick curtain near the wall, her heart racing. She planned to wait a moment before returning, just long enough for the tension to fade. But as she stood there, hidden in the shadows, the men began to talk. Their voices dropped low, calm and confident. They spoke about a wedding planned for the future. About a powerful groom who believed he was safe. One man said the public setting was perfect because no one would expect violence during a celebration. Another laughed quietly and said the kiss would be the best distraction of all. Amara felt her stomach twist. They talked about timing, about patience, about a signal that would mean everything was ready. 2 taps. A pause. A nod. Clean and simple. Amara pressed her hand over her mouth, afraid her breathing was too loud. Her legs felt weak, but she didn't move. She listened as they discussed exits, guards, and how the death would look like an accident if anyone asked questions later. But no name was ever spoken. No photo. No description. Just one word. The groom. When the voices finally stopped and footsteps moved away, Amara stayed behind the curtain for a long time. She left the party early that night without telling anyone. For days after, she tried to convince herself it was not real, that men like that talked big, that she was just a waitress who heard things she did not understand. She tried to forget. Now the memory crashed into the present like cold water. Amara stood in a glowing wedding hall, her eyes lifting slowly toward the groom. Seo Kongryan stood at the center, calm and controlled, his face unreadable as guests smiled and clapped around him. Someone nearby whispered his name with respect. Korean Mafia boss. Amara's heart dropped. The signal. The kiss. The timing. Everything connected at once. Her fingers went numb as the truth settled in her chest. She had not overheard a random plan. She had not imagined the danger. She was standing inside it. Her eyes stayed locked on Kongryan as the crowd leaned closer, waiting for the moment everyone came to see. The kiss. And in that instant, Amara finally understood what the men behind the curtain had meant. The target had never been a stranger. The target was standing right in front of her. Amara's eyes darted across the glittering hall, searching for anything unusual. Every smile, every raised glass, every shimmer of gold decorations suddenly felt suspicious. The music played on, soft and sweet, but her mind only heard the quiet warning of the signal she knew too well. The men had spoken about timing. Timing meant seconds, and seconds meant lives. Her gaze landed on a small camera perched in the corner of the room, one that clearly wasn't part of the wedding crew. It was sleek, black, and aimed directly at the center of the hall, where Kongryan stood. Someone was recording this moment, but not for memories. This was an observation. A plan in motion. A trap already set. Amara's breath quickened as she scanned the tall glass walls. Her eyes caught a dark, round shape reflected in the windows. At first, she thought it was a decorative reflection, but as she blinked and focused, her stomach dropped. It wasn't decoration. It was a rifle scope. Steady. Precise. Pointing straight at Kongryan, waiting for the perfect instant. She stepped back slightly, nearly bumping into a waiter carrying champagne. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the soft laughter of the guests. Every step she took felt like walking on the edge of a knife. The danger was no longer hidden. It was happening now. The bride moved closer to Kongryan, her smile radiant and practiced. Amara noticed the subtle tilt of the bride's head, the way her eyes flicked toward the windows. Something in that glance made Amara's blood run cold. This was more than a wedding. It was part of the plan. Part of the trap. Every movement, every gesture had been calculated. Amara's hands trembled slightly on the tray she carried. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her breathing quiet. The crowd was too busy cheering, too distracted by the music and the flowers to notice the tension building in the shadows. Time seemed to stretch. Seconds slowed. Amara's heart beat so loud she thought the sniper might hear it from above. Her mind raced for a way to stop this, anyway, but every path seemed impossible. No one could be warned in time. Security would never understand. The camera. The rifle. The precise timing. Everything was against her. She took a shallow breath and looked up at Kongryan, his calm face unshaken, completely unaware of the danger aimed at him. The bride raised her hand slightly, preparing to lean in. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the moment, cheering without knowing the disaster that might follow. Amara's stomach knotted. Every instinct in her screamed to act. Her mind knew what needed to happen. Her body felt frozen, trapped in the moment between life and death. The kiss was seconds away. Amara's hands shook as she moved toward the nearest security guard, her voice trembling even before she tried to speak. "Sir. There's." The man barely glanced at her. He smiled politely, then turned back to the crowd as if she hadn't even been there. Another guard passed by, nodding at a guest who spilled champagne, but they didn't see her panic, didn't hear the warning that screamed in her chest. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She couldn't shout. Not here, not now. A loud cry would only draw attention to herself, and the timing for the signal was too precise. The men she had overheard had planned everything. 2 taps. A pause. A nod. Any interruption, any misstep, and the trap would activate exactly as they intended. Amara backed away, weaving through the crowd, trying to keep her movements natural. She felt her legs trembling under her, her mind racing for a solution. There was no way to reach Ryan directly. The room was full of people, full of distractions, full of impossibilities. The bride leaned closer, smiling, raising her face toward Ryan. The music softened, the crowd held its breath, and Amara's stomach twisted with terror. Every second counted. 1 second too late, 1 second too early, and the rifle above would fire. She glanced at the windows, at the reflection of the scope pointed with deadly precision. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It waited. Amara's pulse raced. She realized that running was pointless. Screaming was useless. Even if she made it to the stage, the sniper would already see her coming. The plan had been set weeks in advance, each step measured to the second. Her mind pounded. Every possible choice narrowed down to one horrifying truth. The only way to stop this would put her in the middle of it. The only way to save him would mean breaking every rule, stepping into a moment no one expected, and risking herself completely. Her eyes flicked back to Ryan. He was smiling at the bride, unaware, calm, proud. The kiss was about to happen. The room leaned in closer. The crowd was already lost in the spectacle, too blind to notice the danger hanging above their heads. Amara's chest tightened. Fear and determination collided inside her. She had no choice. There was only one action left. Only one move that could possibly stop the bullet. Only one way to change the timing, to break the trap that had been set with such precision. Her hand shook as she raised it slightly, as if to steady herself. Her mind raced faster than her heartbeat. Every second, every moment, every breath counted. And in that instant, as the bride tilted her head closer, as the music softened, as the crowd held its breath, Amara understood the horrifying truth. There was only one way to stop it. The crowd leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the bride and groom. Cameras flashed. Phones lifted. Every smile and every whisper blurred into one long moment that seemed to stretch forever. Amara's chest pounded. She could hear her own heartbeat louder than the music. Every second felt like it could be the last. She stepped forward. One careful, quiet step after another, weaving between guests who didn't notice her. Her hands shook, her stomach twisted, and her mind screamed at her to stop, to run, to hide. But she knew better. If she didn't act, the sniper would fire the bullet timed to perfection. Ryan would die in front of everyone, and the plan would be complete. Her eyes locked on him. Calm. Proud. Oblivious to the danger hovering above. The bride smiled and tilted her head, preparing for the kiss that would trigger the trap. The crowd was silent now, waiting, frozen in anticipation. Amara's pulse raced faster than it had in her life. She knew there was no other choice. No one could hear her warning. No one could stop what was coming. Only she could break the timing. Only she could interrupt the moment before it ended in death. With a sudden surge of courage, she lunged forward. Before anyone could react, before security could grab her, her hands found Ryan's face. Her lips pressed against his in a sharp, shocking kiss. The room froze. Gasps exploded like fireworks. Cameras clicked frantically. Phones fell from hands. Conryan blinked, startled, his mind registering confusion and surprise all at once. The bride shrieked, stepping back in horror. Guests murmured and whispered, some stepping back, some frozen in disbelief. No one had ever imagined this. No one had expected it. Then a gunshot cracked the air. Too early. The bullet struck the ceiling, splintering a crystal chandelier. Tiny fragments rained down like deadly sparks. Guests screamed and ducked. Security shouted, rushing toward the sound. Chaos erupted instantly. Chairs toppled. Glass shattered. People screamed and pushed toward the exits. The music ended abruptly, leaving only the sound of panic. Amara pulled back, still holding Conryan's face, her mind racing. Her heart pounded. She had broken the timing. She had stopped the perfect shot. But she knew, even as the chaos swirled around them, that the danger was not over. The sniper was still there, waiting for the next moment, adjusting, planning again. Conryan's eyes searched the room, finally noticing the dark shapes of security moving toward the exits. He looked at Amara, realization dawning slowly. There was fear in her eyes, but also determination, the kind of fear that refused to surrender. The crowd screamed. The bride cried. The music was gone. The hall had become a battlefield in seconds. And in the midst of it all, Amara knew the truth she had feared from the start. Breaking the moment had only saved him for now. The trap had not failed. It had only shifted. The danger was still out there. And it was coming for them. Screams echoed through the wedding hall as security rushed forward, tackling guests in panic. Champagne glasses shattered on the marble floor, and people stumbled over one another as they tried to escape the chaos. The music was gone, replaced by the high-pitched sound of alarmed voices and the clatter of furniture. Amara pressed herself against a table, heart pounding, trying to stay unseen. She had done what she could, but her mind refused to stop racing. The sniper was gone now, at least temporarily, retreating into the shadows to wait for the next opportunity. But the danger was still very real, and the perfect timing of the plan had not completely failed. Conryan stepped back, pulling himself away from Amara just enough to survey the room. His calm, controlled expression began to harden as he noticed the chaos around him. Guests ran and shouted, security yelled at them to stay down, and the chandelier above shimmered with broken crystals that had rained down like fire. Then the bride pulled away from him, her face twisted not in fear, but in rage. She screamed, her voice sharp and piercing, louder than any alarm or shout in the room. Her perfectly styled hair and dress now looked chaotic, her elegant smile gone. Conryan's eyes narrowed as he observed her closely. There was something in the way she moved, in the coldness in her gaze, that set his instincts on edge. This was never a real wedding. Every gesture, every glance, every smile she had given him had been calculated. The kiss, the plan, the people around them, everything had been designed to lead to one outcome, and tonight's disaster had been only part of it. Amara's heart sank as she realized the truth. The bride had not been shocked, frightened, or betrayed. She was angry because the timing had been ruined. Because someone had interfered. Because the plan was now in jeopardy. Conryan's mind raced, trying to assess the bride, the crowd, the room, and the threat that had not yet passed. His eyes flicked to the windows and the shadows beyond them, searching for any sign of the sniper or the hidden danger that had been waiting for the perfect moment. Amara stayed close behind him, still trembling, still gripping her tray like a lifeline. She knew the truth she could not yet say out loud, the bride was not just an observer. She had been part of the plan. Part of the trap. Conryan's eyes met hers for just a moment, and in that fleeting glance, Amara felt the unspoken understanding pass between them. There was danger closer than she had imagined, someone waiting to act again, someone who had come too close for her to ignore. Her breath caught in her chest as the realization settled in fully. The plan had not failed entirely. It had only shifted. And the woman standing beside him, smiling, angry, controlled, was part of it. Amara's legs felt like lead as she backed away from the center of the hall. Every step she took was slow, careful, but her fear made her tremble uncontrollably. Her heart pounded so loudly she felt sure everyone around her could hear it. Glass crunched beneath her shoes, and shards from the broken chandelier glittered like sharp stars on the marble floor. She thought she might be safe if she simply disappeared into the chaos. She could slip past the panicked guests, past the toppled tables, past the shouting security, and vanish before anyone noticed. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and cold sweat ran down her neck. Then she heard it. Two voices, low and deliberate, carried over the shouting and screams. She froze. The waitress saw too much, one of them whispered, almost casually, as if discussing the weather. Amara's stomach lurched. She turned her head slightly, trying to locate the source without drawing attention to herself. Two guards, calm and methodical, were moving toward the far side of the hall. Their eyes flicked to her for a fraction of a second before they returned to scanning the room. Her blood ran cold. She had thought the danger was only above her, in the sniper's scope, or in the chaos of the ruined wedding. She had thought staying behind Conryan, staying quiet, and moving carefully would be enough. But now, she realized, the trap had a second layer. She had never been meant to survive. Her mind raced. The men she had overheard weeks ago had planned carefully. Not just the death of the groom. Not just the perfect timing of the shot. They had accounted for anyone who might interfere. Anyone who might see too much. And now she had. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was no easy escape. Every exit was watched. Every shadow could hide someone waiting. She clutched her tray like a shield, her knuckles white, as her mind calculated every possible move. Amara's heart hammered in her chest, and her legs shook so violently that she stumbled slightly. The crowd was still screaming, the chaos still raging, but all she could hear was the whisper that had frozen her in place. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. She had already risked everything to stop the sniper, to save Conryan. And she had succeeded, but the cost had not ended. She was now in the open, exposed, a target herself. Her eyes scanned the room once more, catching every reflection, every moving shadow, every figure that might move toward her. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The adrenaline was burning in her veins, making her hands shake more than before. The whispers repeated in her mind. She saw too much. She cannot survive. Amara realized, with a chilling clarity, that her life was no longer her own. The trap had not been broken, it had simply shifted. And now, she was the next target. Conryan stood still as the chaos raged around him. His guards moved fast, shouting orders, blocking exits, pulling guests to safety. But his mind was no longer in the room. It was already putting pieces together, sharp and fast, the way it always did when danger showed its face. A trusted man leaned close and spoke in a low voice. The words were quick, urgent, and deadly clear. The sniper had vanished through a route owned by the bride's family. The false camera had been planted by their people. The guards who whispered about the waitress did not belong to him. The truth settled like ice in Conryan's chest. The bride's family had planned everything. This wedding had never been about peace. It had been a stage. A trap built with smiles, flowers, and false vows. The kiss was meant to end him, and when that failed, the loose ends were meant to be erased. His eyes moved through the hall until they found Amara. She stood near a broken table, shaking, trying to make herself small. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, but she was still standing. Still breathing. Still alive because she had chosen to act when no one else had. Conryan understood the next truth just as clearly. Saving her would start a war. The bride's family was powerful. Protected. Connected. If he moved against them openly, blood would follow. Alliances would break. Years of careful control would be lost. His enemies would rise, sensing weakness, sensing chaos. But if he did nothing, if he allowed the whispers to become action, Amara would disappear before the night ended. Letting her die would be easy. Safe. Clean. No one would question it. She was only a waitress. A woman who stepped where she did not belong. The world would move on, and so would he. Conryan closed his eyes for half a second. He remembered the moment her hands had touched his face. The shock. The confusion. The sudden break in time. He remembered the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. That kiss had not been soft or planned. It had been desperate. Brave. Honest. It had saved his life. He opened his eyes again, and his expression hardened. Conryan turned to his men. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Every guard straightened when he spoke. They had heard this tone before, just before things changed forever. "Protect the waitress," he said quietly. "Anyone who moves against her moves against me." The words hit the air like thunder. A pause followed. A dangerous one. Conryan knew what that order meant. Once spoken, it could not be taken back. Lines had been drawn. Blood would answer. But he did not hesitate. As his men moved, Conryan understood the final truth of the night. He had chosen war. And everything was about to change. The wedding hall no longer looked like a place of celebration. White roses lay crushed under running feet, their petals stained dark as blood spread across the marble floor. Shattered glass glittered everywhere, and the smell of smoke mixed with perfume and fear. What had begun as a promise of peace had turned into open war. Shots rang out, sharp and fast, echoing through the tall hall. Conryan's men moved with discipline, forming shields, pulling him back, protecting Amara as they pushed through the chaos. Across the room, men loyal to the bride's family tried to hold their ground, shouting orders that no longer mattered. Alliances that had been hidden behind smiles snapped in seconds. Guests screamed and ran for cover. Some dropped to the floor, hands over their heads. Others tripped over fallen chairs and torn decorations, desperate to escape. The sound of crying mixed with the pounding of boots and the crack of gunfire. Phones fell from shaking hands, forgotten as survival became the only thought. Amara stayed close to Conryan's guards, her heart racing so hard it hurt. She had never seen anything like this. The roses, the music, the promises, all of it was gone. In its place was fear, shouting, and the truth she could no longer escape. Her life had crossed a line, and there was no way back. At the center of the storm, the bride struggled as two guards grabbed her arms. Her white dress dragged across the floor, torn and stained, her perfect image finally breaking. She screamed in anger, not fear, cursing and fighting as metal cuffs snapped around her wrists. Her eyes burned with hate as she looked toward Conryan, then toward Amara. "You ruined everything," she shouted. Sirens wailed outside the building, growing louder with every second. Red and blue lights flashed through the shattered glass, casting wild shadows across the hall. The sound made everyone move faster. Some of the bride's allies dropped their weapons and tried to blend into the crowd. Others fought harder, knowing this was the end of the plan. Conryan watched as the bride was dragged away. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. He knew this was only the beginning. The arrest would not end the war. It would only expose it to the world. Amara felt tears sting her eyes as she looked around. People were hurt. Dreams were broken. The wedding that was meant to seal peace had done the opposite. She realized that nothing about this day could be erased. No apology could fix it. No lie could cover it up. The sirens screamed closer. The hall echoed with the final shouts as the fighting slowed, leaving behind silence heavy with consequence. Amara hugged her arms around herself, shaking, understanding the truth with painful clarity. This day would be remembered forever. And nothing about it could be undone. Amara stood outside the small cafe where she used to work, staring at the locked glass door. Her uniform was still folded in her bag, clean and unused, like a piece of a life that no longer wanted her. A message had come that morning, short and cold. We can't keep you. It's not safe. No goodbye. No thank you. Just fear. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. She didn't need to look to know what it was. Another alert. Another post. Another video. Her face was everywhere now. Someone had filmed the moment she stepped forward at the wedding. The kiss. The gunshot. The chaos. Online, the clip played again and again, slowed down, zoomed in, torn apart by strangers who had never known her name before. Hero Waitress, some called her. Attention seeker, others said. A few asked why she was even there. Some blamed her for the blood on the floor. Amara walked home with her head down, but it didn't help. People stared. A woman whispered her name as she passed. A man lifted his phone and pretended to scroll while recording her. Even the street felt different, like it was watching her too. At home, she locked the door and slid down against it, her knees weak. Silence filled the small room, heavy and loud at the same time. This was the quiet life she used to know. Simple shifts. Long walks. Nights where no one cared who she was. That life was gone. Her phone rang. A number she didn't know. She let it ring until it stopped, then rang again. And again. Messages followed. Some asked for interviews. Some offered money. Some warned her to be careful. One message stood out, short and unsettling: you should not have kissed him. Amara dropped the phone like it burned her. She thought of Kong Ryan. The power around him. The danger that followed him like a shadow. She had saved him, yes. But she had also stepped into his world, and it did not let people leave untouched. She wondered if he was safe now. If he even thought about her at all. Her reflection in the dark window looked older. Tired. Someone she barely recognized. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart still beating fast, still afraid. Saving a powerful man had cost her everything normal. Her job. Her peace. Her privacy. That night, as the city buzzed outside and her phone lit up again with her name, Amara whispered the question she was too scared to ask out loud. Had saving him ruined her own life? And if it had, would anyone come to save her? The knock came just after midnight. Amara froze, sitting on the edge of her bed, the room dark except for the streetlight leaking through the window. No one visited her anymore. Everyone either watched from a screen or stayed far away. The knock came again, slow and careful, like the person on the other side did not want to scare her. Her heart pounded as she moved to the door and looked through the peephole. CO Kong Ryan stood outside alone. No suit. No crowd. Just a dark coat and tired eyes that looked heavier than before. The power around him was still there, but quieter now, like a fire burned low under ash. Amara opened the door a few inches, her hands shaking. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I know, he said softly. That's why I came myself. She stepped back, and he entered, closing the door behind him. The room felt too small for a man like him. He looked around, taking in the plain walls, the worn chair, the life she had been living before everything broke. Silence stretched between them. "I lost my job," Amara said, her voice tight. "People follow me. They say my name like they own it." "I know," Conryan replied. "My people watch everything now. Because of you, my world burned." Her breath caught. She waited for blame. For anger. For regret. But it did not come. His voice was calm. Honest. Almost heavy with something like shame. "That wedding was built on lies," he continued. "Your kiss broke the plan too early. The shot missed. The truth came out. My enemies moved before they were ready. I survived, but nothing stayed the same." Amara looked at him, confused. "Then why are you here?" "Because you paid the price," he said. "And I walked away alive." She laughed softly, a sad sound. "Alive is not the same as free." He nodded. "I know." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt thick with things that could not be undone. Finally, Conryan took a step forward. Then another. Amara's eyes widened as he stopped in front of her. Slowly, carefully, the most feared man in his world lowered himself. One knee touched the floor. Amara gasped. "What are you doing?" Conryan bowed his head. "I rule men who kill without thinking," he said quietly. "I command loyalty with fear. But you acted with no power, no weapon, no protection. You saved me knowing it might destroy you." Her chest tightened. She felt tears rise, sharp and sudden. "This debt cannot be repaid," he continued. "Money will not fix what you lost. Silence cannot protect you. But know this, no one who stands against you stands alone." He lifted his eyes to hers, still kneeling, still bowed. In that moment, Amara understood something terrifying and impossible. A mafia boss was kneeling before a waitress. And the world outside would never let that remain a secret. Morning came slowly, like the world was afraid to wake up after what had happened. The wedding was gone. The vows, the music, the promise of peace, none of it mattered anymore. The marriage had been erased in a single night, torn apart by truth, bullets, and betrayal. What was left was something far more dangerous. A war had begun. Across the city, quiet meetings replaced loud celebrations. Old allies chose sides. Names were whispered in dark rooms. Everyone knew why the balance had broken. One kiss. 1 second too early. One woman who was never meant to matter. Amara felt that change even before she saw it. When she stepped outside her apartment, a black car waited across the street. It did not follow her closely. It did not hide. It simply stayed there, like a shadow that wanted to be seen. Protection, she knew. And a warning. She was no longer invisible. People still stared, but now there was something else in their eyes. Fear. Respect. Curiosity. She was the woman who stopped a killing. The woman who made a powerful man kneel. Whether she wanted it or not, her name now lived in dangerous places. Conryan watched the city from behind glass walls and heavy guards. He was alive, but the man he had been before the kiss was gone. He saw things clearly now. Lies he once accepted. Smiles that hid knives. He had built his world on control, and a waitress with shaking hands had shown him how fragile that control really was. He was no longer blind. Their lives moved forward on separate paths, yet tied together by an invisible chain. Every choice he made now considered her safety. Every step she took carried his shadow. They did not speak often. They did not need to. Silence held meaning now. At night, Amara sometimes touched her lips, remembering how one brave, reckless act changed everything. She had saved a life, yes. But she had also lost the small, quiet future she once dreamed of. There was no going back to normal. Normal had died in that wedding hall. Still, she did not regret it. Because she understood the truth that only comes after fear fades. Survival was not the end of the story. It was the start of something heavier. Something lasting. Something that demanded strength every single day. One kiss saved his life. And chained their futures together forever. The world would remember the war. But they would remember the moment before it began. When survival was only the beginning.